And we're live. Hi everyone. This is Kyle Whittington, and I am. Wow, Kevin's already here. I'm joined with Michelle from It's Your Girl Saying. I invited her on the show because she brings this level of common sense and just kind of bluntness that I just found really refreshing. In some of her videos, she mentions that she used to be an atheist and now she's a Christian. And since this isn't normally the story that I hear, I really wanted to hear this one from her. So, Michelle, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. So honestly, I'm 34. So for basically majority of my life, I would say I was atheist. I grew up in a household where my mom was Baptist and my dad was Jewish. So they weren't even strict about their faiths. They were kind of just like, oh, you can do whatever you want. So I ended up going to church with my mom when I was younger, but that's just because the daycare we were in was at a church. So I was there every Sunday. But as a kid, you don't really learn anything. Sunday school kind of was like how daycare was. So I don't really
Hmm.
remember much from that point. And then when we stopped going, um, on and off, my mom would go every once in a while with my aunt, who's like really religious.
Hmm.
So what ended up happening in my mind, the churches we ended up going to, because a lot of them were like in black neighborhoods, they were like prosperity churches.
Hmm.
So the pastor, he's always talking about like passing the collection plate around numerous times during the service. So that was kind of my first negative thought with Christianity, because I'm
Hmm.
just like, I don't really like this. And then I would hear stories from my mom's friends where they had been going to churches like their whole life, and if they finally like something goes bad in their life, where they're just like, oh, can you guys help us out? And the church is like, nah, can't really do that, but you got to keep giving us money and stuff. And I'm just like, man, this kind of religion is this? This is horrible. So in my mind, just thinking about that, I thought Christianity was a joke. And then my dad, with him being Jewish, I did go to temple a few times. I thought that was kind of cool when I was a kid. We practiced like Hanukkah, Passover, Rosh Hashanah, but he didn't really teach me much outside of that. So as I got older, I didn't really do anything on that side either.
Hmm.
And then as you get older, like in school, like the way they teach you science and stuff, I was just kind of like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Like how the earth came from the Big Bang theory, like evolution. I don't know.
Hmm.
It just made sense to me. I kind of just, to me, I gravitated towards that. I didn't care about religion at all. And it was weird because there was moments in my life where I feel like certain things happened where I should have picked up a Bible at that point, and I just kept rejecting it. And I don't know why, but we're human, so it just happens. And it wasn't until recently, where like actually this time last year, that I think about it, my boyfriend and I went through something like couples go through crap, and we've been
Right.
together a long time, so we are way out of the honeymoon phase. And I was really angry at him, and we weren't on like the best of terms for a while, and we tried to work through that. And then at some point in January, it was like a demon was like messing with me. Like I don't know if you've ever had sleep paralysis and you just see
Hmm.
weird stuff happening but you can't move. Well, the job he had at the time, he would leave like early in the morning. I would hear him leave because I would be up. Then I'd go back to sleep. And it'd be like I would hear him come back in the house and walk in the room and be like, hey, give me a kiss. Or I'd like feel somebody on my shoulder touching me. But I kind of just knew it wasn't him.
Hmm.
And I would never open my eyes. And it would just be like, come on, open your eyes, look at me. And I would never do it. And it'd be like, okay. And then you hear him walk out the room, walk out the house, slam the door, and that would be it. And that started ramping up as the months went on. So that would happen once a week. Then it's 2 times a week. Then it's 3 times a week. And now as it's ramping up, it's getting like more and more aggressive. So now it's like where it would start off playful, like, hey, come on, open your eyes. Now it's like, look at me. Why won't you say anything? And it's like tossing me around. And it was messing me up. I couldn't sleep at that point. And I didn't really know what to do. And then this YouTuber I was watching, he used to go by Young Don the Sauce God. Now he goes by Young Don Reborn.
Hmm.
Randomly one day in his stream, he was like, "Hey guys, I just want to let you know, I think I'm going to be a Christian." And he was like, "If you stop watching the stream because of that, then you stop watching the stream." And I was like, "Whatever, I don't care," you know,
Mm-hmm.
because I would faithfully watch his streams like every day. So next thing I know, he's live streaming in the mornings, showing how to animate. And because he told people he became Christian, now people are asking him about Christianity and the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And that just turns into him, instead of animating, now he's just doing random Bible studies in the morning.
Hmm.
So now when I'm like walking in the mornings, now I'm listening to him as he's doing Bible study. So now I'm listening to like all this scripture. And when I'm at home and he's doing it, it's like playing through all the speakers in my house. Funnily enough, when all this starts, all that weird like demon mess just randomly stops. And I'm like, that's interesting. Then I'm watching Dave Ramsey and he's like, "Oh, my buddy, Rabbi Daniel Lampkin, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, let me look into this. So now I'm listening when this YouTuber is not speaking about the Bible. Now I'm listening to this rabbi speak about the Torah. And that's all I'm hearing all day nonstop for like 2 months straight. And then I'm doing my own research on top of that, because now I'm just like, okay, should I be Jewish? Should I be Christian? And I don't know. I end up choosing Christianity. And it's weird because like everything that I've had issues with prior to this, because I had like depression and stuff too. And I would do things to kind of help with that, where I'm like, oh, it's kind of helping, but I'm still having issues over here. I don't do any of those things anymore, ever since just like picking a Bible up.
Huh. That's really cool.
Yeah, like I feel like fine now.
So you okay? So you mentioned that your dad was Jewish, and that's that's incredibly interesting to me. So I guess why not Judaism? Like what was like was there like a lack of appeal there, or did or did Christianity just like feel right?
I think Christianity just felt right. And then the stuff I was reading at the time, it said to to get to God, like you have to accept Jesus into your heart. And that's like one thing you don't do in Judaism.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's like one of the major differences. So I was like, I was really thinking about it. If I was like, if I'm going to be serious about this and do this every day, and I know I want to go to heaven and stuff, this kind of makes more sense to me.
Gotcha. So like I guess with the encounter with the demonic is a obviously it's a pretty scary thing. At any time during that, because if you said that was going on, but you weren't exactly a Christian, were you ever like looking for any natural explanations, or did you just kind of like just write it off because it's better not to look than to investigate and figure out that it's something that might ask you to change your life?
So I've always believed in like ghosts and stuff. So I've always believed like witchcraft was real, demons, ghosts, all that. So even though I wasn't Christian, a part of me was like, something's going on.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
so I was looking into stuff. And I remember one day I went out with my mom. I wasn't even, because I couldn't sleep. I wasn't sleeping well at that point. And I remember just telling her over lunch one day, I was like, this is what's going on, and I don't know what it is. And she's Christian. So she's like, yeah, demons are real, and this is what's happening, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, all right, maybe I'll just look into that. And that was kind of around the time when that YouTuber just randomly was like, I'm Christian now.
Huh.
So
Yeah, it's so crazy because sometimes like we hear these stories of Scott Hahn is the first name that comes to mind, and he's worth looking into. But like whenever you talk about like their journey to Christ, is they're reading so many books and it's like, oh, I do this, I can disprove this and whatever. And then sometimes it's just like it's literally like being led by the Holy Spirit. It's like I didn't read into this.
yeah,
It was just it was just like this just felt like the right decision.
yeah.
Um, So it sounds like you kind of fall more into that, like, I felt led into this. This just seems like the right thing to do. Does that sound about
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like.
Oh, that's I find all these stories fascinating because no two of them are exactly alike. Now, okay, so you may have considered yourself an atheist, but you still had a belief in the supernatural. Was that
Yeah.
just something like you didn't it's like, well, there may be no God, but there's still some things that we haven't figured out. Was that like a what am I trying to say here? Was that something that you ever like grappled with, or is that just something that you were just comfortable like letting it lay alone?
Um, I would say like that was something I was comfortable grappling with because ever since I was a kid, weird things would happen, and I would just be like, "Oh, that has to be because of a ghost or something going
Hmm.
on." And I would look into things, and then there's like all these scientific theories about how there's probably other dimensions where
Hmm.
like we could be interacting with that, or there's a spiritual realm, just things of that nature. So I don't know. I've always been into that. I don't
Okay.
like creepy, spooky things, but then I'm always drawn to stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that definitely that that definitely that lines up with a lot of things that I've heard. We've got one of my friends here in the live chat. He's asking the question, 2 years ago, would you have called yourself an atheist, or would you have called yourself just a nothing in particular?
I would have just said I was an atheist 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, like, okay, so you believe that there was no God. Was that just because it was, like you mentioned the prosperity gospel preachers that you had kind of grown up around? Was that just because, like, you thought Christianity was false and you just didn't look into anything else, or did you ever like look into any other religions?
I did think Christianity was false because of that. And
Hmm, okay.
then I think like how every young person just trying to randomly find themselves if they're not religion, you do like, oh, what's Buddhism like or in
Right.
Hinduism and stuff like that. So I looked into all that when I was younger and none of it connected with me. So
Okay.
yeah.
That's Have you ever reached out to that what was it, the Dom the Sauce guy, or Dom the Reborn? Have you ever reached out to him and like let him know that like he kind of had this effect on you?
Yeah. I'm actually in he has a Christian Discord server and I'm actually in it.
Oh, okay, that's really cool.
Yeah. And he's actually like active all the time in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. So it's just like it or not, you kind of have a little bit of a ministry now. Like
Yeah. Because
that's
there's people from like all over the world joined.
mhm,
So if like when I first went in there and I had questions, there's all these people that was like further in their walk than me. So they're just like, oh
mhm.
yeah, read this scripture and read this like verse and chapter and blah blah blah. And I was like, oh okay. So I started heavily just reading stuff.
Okay. I've heard you mention on your channel before, like you've read into apologetics a little bit. Do you have any favorite apologists?
Not I so far I've been watching I think it's called like the Red Mark
Hmm.
apologist or Red Line. I reacted to one of his videos. I can't remember his
Was it the red
exact.
pen logic guy?
Yeah, Red Pen. Yeah.
Yeah, like, that's how I found you, actually, because I was watching one of his videos because, like, as far as Protestant apologetics go, like, he is probably one of my favorites,
Yeah.
because, like, he definitely deals in a lot of, like, common ground,
Uh-huh.
which I really appreciate because, one of my favorite, philosophers, Peter Kraft, has a saying of, when there's a madman at the door, feuding brothers reconcile.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like, the Catholic Protestant split, there's a lot of ground to be covered in that conversation. And, you and I are not going to solve that conversation. We're not going to solve that riddle today.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just really appreciate that this guy is taking like an intellectual rigor. But yeah, and I think I watched that reaction video of yours and yeah, it was, I don't know, it was just rather refreshing. It was rather encouraging to see that like our Protestant brothers and sisters are also kind of bringing a little bit of, muscle into this fight.
Yeah.
So, um, okay. So, now you mentioned that your dad is Jewish. Now,
Yeah.
um, I don't mean to be insensitive at all, but it's not very common that you hear somebody like from the black community also being Jewish.
Yeah.
So how I kind of want to go a little bit into your dad a little bit. So how did that happen?
Um, it's kind of funny how he met my mom.
Hmm.
His friend at the time was dating my mom's sister. So
Okay.
yeah, so he just happened to hang around. And then one day when he was just with his friend at their house to pick up her sister, he saw my mom. And she didn't want anything to do with them because he's 12 years older than my mom.
Okay.
So at the time she's just looking at him like, I don't want to talk to this old guy. Like she was trying to party and club at the time, and
Right.
then he just started from what she told me, he would start going to her house just like waiting for her. So he would sit there and like talk to her mom and run errands for her mom and stuff. And she would come in and see him and be like, nah. And she would go get dressed and leave. And after a while, she finally just broke and was like, fine, I'll go on a date with you.
That's really cool. So what you mentioned earlier in the interview about how like he would take you to temple. So what was that like? So what how did that work? Like so you first walk in like I imagine that's rather different than like what we as Christians would assume like what a service would look like. So how'd that work?
From what I can remember, because I was really young at the time,
Hmm.
the one I think we went to two different ones. So the first one, everybody can kind of just sit together, and the rabbi would like do his service, I guess, off the Torah.
Hmm.
And at the end of it, there was like a bunch of food just like spread out. Now I don't know if that was like an every time thing or if we went for a special occasion, but
Hmm.
like every time we went, it was like always like that. And then there was another one we went to where like the men were on one side and the women were kind of on the other side.
Hmm. That's wow. I've never heard that before. That's really interesting because, like, on
Yeah.
one, like the first thing you described sounded a lot like a Southern Baptist service with
Yeah.
the with all the food, and then the men and the women, like that's kind of given me some like the only place I've ever heard of that is like Saudi Arabia. Um,
Yeah, they
so
do that too. Yeah.
yeah, so that's incredibly interesting, huh? So and so it was just it was basically a study of the Torah, though. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Were there any things in particular like from the Torah that like kind of stuck out to you, or was it just kind of like you were a little kid and it's just like, listen, I'm just ready to go home? Like,
Yeah, because I had no clue what was going on. I was just a kid, and the only thing I just kept looking at the food off to the side. And I was like, when's he gonna stop talking so we can like get to this over here?
yeah, no, that sounds like it. It's whenever I take my kids to church on Sundays, they're always like tugging at me, and it's just like, when are we gonna go eat donuts?
Yeah,
And which I mean, the masses that we go to are in Latin, so they're the kids don't understand it. I barely understand, and they are yeah, so it's just like I mean, I'm not upset with them at all. It's just like, yeah, I get it.
yeah,
This is kind of all over your head, and
yeah. They're
I
kids.
understand that you're here for the donuts, or you're here because I told you to, and you're tolerating it for the donuts.
Yeah, pretty much.
But all right, so one of the things that you mentioned in one of your videos was specifically about the King James Bible, and I'd heard people like sing its praises before, but like
Mhm.
as a Catholic, like the King James isn't exactly high on our list. Um, it's on the list, just not close to the top usually.
Yeah,
But you said something is like, my Bible's from the 1600s, and I didn't even consider for a single second that that adds a lot of really important context. And it's just like, well, that word wouldn't
mhm.
have been translated like this. And you went like, actually, no, in the 1600s, you can see that it was translated like this.
Yeah.
So you say that the King James is your favorite translation. So, I guess what are some of the things that you like about it?
Um, honestly, like I guess the Shakespearean like writing
Hmm.
of it, because it sounds really good. It
Yeah.
just does. And then it was just recommended to me. So when I
Okay.
decided to jump into it, everybody was like, "Oh, that's the best version." And I was
Mhm.
like, "What do you mean the best version? Like what
Yeah.
is?" Yeah, so in the beginning I had no clue, but then when I got it and I started reading it, I was just like, "Oh, this is actually kind of cool. This is because even though it's from that point in time, to me it's so easy to read.
Hmm.
So I don't really have trouble with like how it's like how you read it, how the words were in the
Hmm.
language at the time. And it's also a study Bible. So if I do come across something where I'm like, what does that mean? At the very bottom, everything is still broken down in like how we speak now.
Yeah. There's it's a really it's a long interview. It's over 3 hours, I believe. But Matt Fradd recently did an interview with Peter Kraft, who he's a professor of philosophy in Boston College, and he talks about lovingly about the King James version, and he talks about the poetry of it and how he says like, I don't know Hebrew, but I do know Greek. And at times, whenever the Greek is very poetic, it seems modern translations are allergic to the poetry, but seem to try to be very scientific. Except he said in newer translations, once again, they're still allergic to the poetry, but they're not actually more accurate. And he said, like, the King James Bible actually did a really good job about like conveying like both the poetry and the accuracy, which he
Yeah.
says like it's not something that you would ever expect from something from the 17th century. Um,
Yeah.
so which I'm kind of it's whatever it was that, and then like I watched your video, I was like, okay, I gotta add one of these to the library. If I speak English, I should, I really should.
Yeah.
Um,
Because it is really good.
yeah,
Like how it's written, it reminds me, I don't know if you remember in English class when we had to do like the whole Shakespeare section of things.
yeah,
Yeah, it reminds me of that. And I didn't really mind Shakespeare. I thought it was, I guess at the time, I thought it was boring because I was a teenager. But I remember my teachers, because we had to take turns like reading it out loud and stuff, they were just like, you read this so well and blah, blah, blah. And it always confused me at the time because I'm like, how is everybody else struggling with this?
yeah,
But now looking back on it, I'm like, oh, this is why.
yeah. I so personally, I do struggle with it, and I think, and this isn't a like I'm not saying that this is a good thing about me. It's actually something I'm struggling with, and I'm trying to like grow in. Is I do not have a poet's heart at all. Like that allergic to poetry, like that's
Yeah.
me, and which really really sucks. Because like I know that I'm like missing out on a lot of this stuff because well, yesterday was All Souls Day, and we had a Requiem Mass, which was one of the most beautiful liturgies I've ever experienced in my life. And but it was the poetic and the beauty of the singing and everything. Like I was literally in tears. And then I kind of just now I'm thinking about like how that same beauty is present in some translations,
Yeah.
and it's just like, dang, like, I wish I could get to the point where like I'm able to to listen to or to read that in like what's already there. Um and I don't know. Like so I guess if for somebody like me who doesn't have a poet's heart, um I don't know, what would you recommend?
um, I don't know. I just think to not have a poet, you really just have to be drawn by it.
Okay.
Because it does depend, because it's not like I like all poetry either. It's like certain things.
Hmm.
And that's okay. That's like we're all different, so that's okay.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, it's Kevin's going in the live chat. I don't know if you can see that on the side there, but he as I explained it to him, like I don't get upset whenever I see people doing things differently than me. I think of it a lot like, when we were in school, you're doing math, and I can look over at your paper and I can see that you got 2 + 2 = 5. Obviously you're wrong. It's obviously 7. You know, exact it's just like, well, just because, you're wrong, that doesn't necessarily make me right.
Yeah.
And especially like in high school, the more complicated problems, like you make one minor misstep and you get a completely different answer.
Yeah.
Or it's like, that's not saying that the right answer doesn't exist, but like I can't get angry at someone because they, whenever they saw um something, right or left, I went right, they went left. Like if I
Yeah.
had different shoes on, like I might have chosen the same way. So it's like I really can't get upset about that.
Yeah.
Um, but Kevin's also asking about okay, so this might because I don't know your backstory, but are you any particular denomination, or are you non-denominational, or would you be what we call merely Christian as described by C.S. Lewis?
I'm non-denominational because
Okay.
honestly, I did look into that before deciding to become Christian, and I
Okay.
really just didn't know what the differences were in all of them.
Okay.
And I was just like, you know what? I'll just be non-denominational, and whatever this book says, I'm just gonna do.
Okay. Um, have you so okay, so you went non-denominationals because it was just like clearly there's I think what is the number that likes to get cited, like 40,000. There's 40,000 different options. Like
Yeah.
obviously one of these, at least one of these has to be, a good place to call home. So was it more just like I'm gonna go where it feels right, or did you like kind of like do some research, or was it like an invite to a friend? Like what helped you settle to where you are now?
Um, Honestly, I would walk around my city, and then when I was driving around in other cities, every time I would come across a church, it'd be like Lutheran such and such church,
Mhm.
Protestant church, Catholic church, and I'm just like, well, which one is correct? So
Okay.
and then I was doing my own research, and I just didn't understand the differences. And then one day I'm driving in like a little downtown, like small area part of another city by me, and it just
Mhm.
said Bible church, and I was like,
Hmm.
that's the one.
Okay.
I was like, we're gonna test this out, and they had like a live stream
Mhm.
portion. So if you don't go in on Sundays, you can watch it at home. So I was like, I'll stay home and I'll test this out, and if I like it, then I'll just start going. And I did like it. The pastor was really cool, and now I just
Hmm.
go down there like every Sunday now.
Okay. Cool. Well, once again, it's kind of one of those things of, being led by the Holy Spirit, like where,
Yeah.
where are you going to go? It's just like, what's the rational reasoning? It's like, well, I don't know. It just felt right.
Yeah,
Um,
because the other churches, I did like whatever I would pass, I would write it down and I would go home
okay.
and go to their website. So I did try to kind of see, but I don't know where I go now. It just seems right. So yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, like once again, like I'm not going to fault anybody for that because,
yeah.
a lot of times I think, have you ever heard of the channel Capturing Christianity
I
with
don't think
Cam?
so.
He's a really cool guy. He's a Protestant apologist. He's
Okay.
currently working through everything. And on the off chance that anybody who knows Cameron ever watches this, which is really low, but I don't want to criticize him too much. But one thing that I think that he does a little too much is that it's all head for him and not enough heart.
Mm,
And which, I mean, the guy's way smarter than me,
yeah.
and so the way he's approaching it is very analytical, very scientific, and uh,
Mm.
but yeah, I mean, and he's getting some huge heavy hitters. Once again, the uh, the channel name is Capturing Christianity, and he likes to do what is called Mere Christianity. Have you read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis?
No, I haven't read that.
Okay. Um, so it's it's a really good book. And C.S. Lewis is probably like, as far as Catholics go, C.S. Lewis are the Catholics' favorite Protestant writer,
Okay.
because Chronicles of Narnia is excellent, but he wrote the Screw Tape Letters, which actually you might really enjoy because, like you mentioned, a shut up, Kevin. They dang it, Kevin derailed me. I'm reading the live chat too much. with your experience with the demonic, so the Screw Tape Letters is written from like an older demon writing to a younger demon, saying like, if you want to deceive this guy effectively, you should do this. And it's really good. It's like a 3-hour audiobook if you like listening to audiobooks. It's really
Yeah.
short and it's really good. And then
Okay.
Mere Christianity, he tries to like focus more on kind of the stuff that we all agree on,
Mhm.
which and that's what I that's what Cameron Bertuzzi likes to focus in on. And it's really, really cool watching him talk about this. And he's really smart. He's a really good resource. But so if you're looking to get more into apologetics, Capturing Christianity is a really good
Okay.
resource. But
Yeah, I pulled the channel up, so I'm
yeah,
gonna
oh
have to
yeah.
check out the videos.
Well, and the guy's just like a visual genius too. So like one of my basically the guy that is my favorite, Matt Frad with Pints with Aquinas. Cameron Bertuzzi like helped him set up his studio because he just knows how to make things look good.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's really good. But Kevin, who's used to be Catholic, his says, Screw Tape Letters is highly recommended, and I'm not even Christian. He's like he thought he was next excellent. So, there's a question from Joshua Gant, who's a new guy. I haven't heard of him before, but he has just a simple, short question. So, what brings you peace?
Um, Honestly, what brings me peace, literally, when I wake up in the morning and I have a cup of coffee and I read my Bible with my cat.
With your cat?
Yeah, and then I'm good for the rest of the day.
Man, that sounds. You ever hear something that's just like so simple and so beautiful? That's kind of what you just hit me
Yeah.
with right there. Like honestly, well, because what is Jesus Christ but the Word made flesh? So
Yeah.
you start your day with an encounter with our Lord in
Hmm.
Scripture, and just and Kevin's saying, "Oh, Josh, okay, so okay, cool, okay, so that's your boyfriend, okay." I was just like, I have no idea who this guy is. I was like, he's just trying to get some inside information, I guess. um, but and Kevin saying that he has 4 cats and they do not bring him peace. I have 1 cat.
Oh.
I'm right there with I'm right there with you, Kevin. Whatever. My wife likes the cat, so happy wife,
You
happy
got to
life.
keep her happy.
Exactly. It's just like, listen, like my comfort's secondary here. Um, but man, before we start talking about cats, trying to remember. But yeah, so that's that's really cool. Do you have any particular favorite books of the Bible?
So far, I really like John. So that's the one I started with, and then so funnily enough, I liked Revelation, but
Mhm.
I think I read it at the wrong time because my so my
Yeah.
Christian group, they saw my one video where I explained my recent religious experience, and they were saying some stuff I didn't know what they were talking about, and they were like, "Oh, you got to read Revelation like as soon as possible," and I'm like, "Okay, but I'm in Genesis and I'm about to finish, so let me finish that first."
Yeah.
And the timing of me reading Revelation was literally Halloween weekend.
Oh boy.
So I read that and I literally had nightmares all weekend.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's I don't know if that's connected to that, but it was
Yeah.
very weird.
Revelation is definitely one of those. I find I find a lot of people, self included, like that. Like I'm in this group as well. A lot of people like to try to start with that one first, I guess, because it's a little, it's a little sexy, the end of the world kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like once again, like guilty as charged. Um, but the more that I've studied scripture, the more that I find that like the fact that it's at the end of the Bible is incredibly appropriate
Yeah.
because so much of the stuff that it calls back to is in the rest of the Bible. and it's
Yeah.
just like there's so many references that get made there. Like the first thing that comes to mind is the end of Revelations 11, beginning of Revelations 12, and it's talking about the Ark of the Covenant. Well, so what is the Ark of the Covenant? What was it used for? Well, if you didn't read, Exodus,
Yeah.
it's just like you might have known that the Ark of the Covenant was a thing, but you didn't, from like watching Indiana Jones or something like that. But like, you don't really know what it's for. Um, and that's yeah, it's really interesting. And I don't want to. I'm not trying to like put you on the spot or anything of like, I think the stereotypical Catholic thing to do would be to like, oh, what's your thought on the bread of life discourse in John 6? But um, well, now that I mentioned that, it's like, are you familiar with the bread of life discourse in John 6?
The bread of life.
Uh,
So
it's
this.
whenever yeah, no, so it's basically whenever Jesus basically tells everyone like, unless you eat my flesh, you do not have life within you.
Oh yeah,
Um
yeah.
oh, so actually I'd love to hear your take on that. Like, so what are your thoughts on that in particular?
I don't really like. I don't
No,
have any
it's all good. That's all
because they
good.
actually do that at my church. So you know how they
Okay.
they pass out the cracker and the wine and all that.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
they do that. So I don't really have an issue with it.
Okay. Um yeah, okay. So that's normally whenever I have people on this stream, I ask them the question of why not Orthodox, because they're usually converting to Catholicism. um have you even ever like looked into Eastern Orthodoxy at all?
Like a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your take on them, or is it just kind of like, does that seem like it's a little out there, a little too much to handle, or like too much to look into? Like, what is your take on the Eastern Orthodox?
I don't really. That's kind of like when I told you I was kind of looking through all the different
Mhm.
denominations and stuff. So just from like a base looking in, like I didn't know who was right, who was wrong.
Yeah, no, it's
So I don't really have a take on like
okay.
everybody.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Um, Kevin's over here saying, what did the Maccabees ever do to you, huh? Yeah. So, you said your conversion was last year, correct?
Well, it was like this summer, but
Okay.
that's because of all the. It was like a long couple months leading up to like this summer.
Okay. All right, cool. So it's fairly recent then. So
Yeah.
you're you're a you're just getting your feet wet again. Like,
Yeah, I'm a
there's a
baby. So
yeah, the Bible's a thick book, and like it's,
yeah.
I've heard of some people saying that like, oh yeah, I read it in a month, and it was just like, and my first thought
How?
on that is you're a liar. Like,
Yeah, they
it's just like,
are.
no, you didn't. Like,
Yeah, there's no way you read all of that and understood all of that in a month.
yeah, and it's just like, it's one of those things of especially whenever, well, I don't know if you're familiar with the differences of the canon of scripture. So like in Protestant Bibles there's 66 books, and in Catholic Bibles there's 73.
Oh yeah, I
And
know that.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, well then let me ask you, how like what's your take on that situation?
So how is there extra books? Or well, how should I say it? Where did the extra books come from?
Okay.
I guess
Well,
that's better.
that's actually an excellent question. Well, so I suppose the Catholic would respond with, "Well, why did you take those books out?" But okay, but where did the extra books come from?
Okay.
Way back in the day, and like, pre before Jesus was incarnated. So this predates the incarnation. There was an Egyptian pharaoh named Ptolemy, and he commissioned the Jewish scribes of the time to compile all of their religious texts and translate it into Greek. Um, and he commissioned 70 scholars to do that. those 70 scholars all produced a translation, and those translations all matched. That document that was then compiled from there was called the Septuagint. So sept, meaning 770 or whatever. I don't know. So it's like those 70 scholars created a single document called the Septuagint. So that was kind of like the Greek translation of these different scriptures. So the Greek translation included First and Second Maccabees. It included some more chapters in the book of Esther, in the book of Daniel, and some I mentioned First and Second Maccabees, and 5 other books as well, like Tobit and some others that are just escaping off the top of my head. So that's where those books come from, because they're included in the Septuagint, which was the Greek translation of these books, and they predate the incarnation. So it's like before Jesus was born, these books were in circulation. The other thing is that whenever you read the New Testament, so whenever Paul's writing, he's always quoting from the Septuagint. So, but I'm now arguing with myself. These, they didn't have books back then. They weren't like single tomes like what we have. They were a series of scrolls. No, the Septuagint was not just the Torah. And so one argument was decided is like, well, what did the Jews believe? It's like, well, actually, so I always get this mixed up, and I'm sure somebody will correct me, between like the Sadducees and the Pharisees. One of those factions only believed in the first 5 books, the Pentateuch. So basically, what is that? Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy. Those are the only books that they accepted as canon. And then the other ones, they had some different ones, and they didn't actually settle that question until Christianity came onto the scene, and they were basically like, "Hey, we got to get on the same page on this, because these Christians are kind of growing like wildfire." But yeah, so I guess that's why, and that's just kind of the very condensed version of the why do Catholics have extra books? Is that we follow the books that would have been included in the Septuagint, which was like the first time that all these books were translated into one language, and that language was Greek. And there's some doctrinal differences and some reasons why that was excluded, but hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
So, because I know the Christian group talked about that before, and I was just like, where do extra books come from? Then somebody mentioned there's some called the Book of Enoch. Is that also part of Catholicism, or is that different?
No. So I believe, and somebody might correct me if I'm wrong here, the Book of Enoch is actually quoted somewhere in the New Testament, but it did not make the cut for being included in the book of like the 73 books of canon. And I believe it described like angels and demons and something. I'm not a biblical scholar, at least not yet. So I couldn't answer that, but I know that it's not in the Catholic canon. However, it is quoted in the New Testament. So yeah, so that's one of those things of like, well, just because it's quoted in the New Testament doesn't necessarily make it scripture. And then the Catholic response would be, and vice versa, just because it's not quoted in the New Testament doesn't make it not scripture, because there's a ton of books in the New Testament that are not quoted, or excuse me, there's a ton of books in the Old Testament that are not quoted in the New.
Okay.
So, yeah. So do you have any other questions like that? Or
not really?
Okay, yeah, no, it's all good. There's a lot of things about Catholicism, and you'll probably the more you research, you'll see in this, there's a lot of like half truths. There's a lot of misconceptions that are out there. Have you ever heard of the Protestant scholar Dr. James White? Have you heard of him before?
No.
Look, hold on, sorry. I gotta ban this guy off of my chat. Block user. Private. Yeah. Sorry. But there's a Dr. James White is one of these guys that's notorious for like spreading lies uh uh about Catholicism, and like I like to joke around like he's made more people Catholic than like anybody else, and he's not Catholic. But but then at the same time you've got people like Dr. Gavin Ortland, who's a very, of all the Protestant scholars and apologists out there, he's like the one that makes me nervous. The guy is so incredibly kind, he's incredibly smart, and I actually I hope to meet him in person here this upcoming March, because he's doing a live debate in Steubenville.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
no, it's really cool. Yeah, so I'm planning on going to that debate, and I'm really looking forward to it. But so after your conversion, what if is there any changes that you've seen in your life? Like, do you live differently? Is it like you've already talked about, like there's more peace, there's more like you're not experiencing like these attacks anymore. Like, is there anything that you specifically do differently now?
Um, like on a really basic level, like
Mhm.
I don't swear anymore.
Oh.
So that used to be like really, I used to swear like a sailor. And
Mhm.
I think that's just because like when I was growing up, I was raised around boys. So how they acted and how they talked is how I would act and talk. And that just
Mhm.
stuck with me. And when I became like an adult for years, I was like, I'm gonna stop swearing. And that would last a couple hours and I'd be right back at it.
Yeah.
So that has changed. Like I don't swear anymore.
Mhm.
The whole depression thing, like that's gone. I
Yeah.
don't really deal with any of that anymore. Um, I had anxiety at one point. It's weird. I never had anxiety before, and it didn't really develop until like January or February. And the therapist I was talking to at the time was telling me about pills, and I don't do pills. So I guess
Mhm.
another way was like CBD. But
Okay.
when it comes to the gummies, I'm allergic to one of the ingredients, so I was only able to smoke
Uh,
it. So
gotcha.
I had to smoke CBD sometimes, but I
Mhm.
don't even do that anymore.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like I don't do a lot of that because I already didn't like drink or smoke anyways. So
Mhm.
now, like all these things, I don't do those. I don't
Okay.
know. It's just it's different now. It's peaceful. I'm like super focused.
That's incredible.
I don't know.
That's amazing to hear, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, because it's in scripture there's always change that happens after an encounter with God. And some people are changed so dramatically that even their name changes. You've got Jacob being renamed to Israel,
Oh yeah.
Abraham, Simon being named Peter.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like one of those uh really dramatic changes. And it's just like it's really cool to hear whenever people like is like, hey, I was kind of living this way, I was struggling with all this, but now would it be accurate to say that you've found a little bit more purpose to your life? Does that sound about right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty spot on.
Yeah. That's I guess so whenever you were an atheist, did you ever grapple with the question of like what is the meaning of life, or was that something you were just comfortable like leaving alone?
I did grapple with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think at some point, I think every young person does.
Right.
Because, when we're younger, it's just kind of like, oh, is this all life is? It's just like work and school and whatever.
Mhm.
There has to be more than this. And you really do struggle to figure that out. And I thought I had figured it out numerous different times. I used to have a YouTube channel years ago. It was like me, my boyfriend, our two friends. And when that got popular, it was like, oh, I figured it out. And then from there, we turned that into like a media company. And I'm like, yeah, we did it. We did it. And then everything just came crashing down. It's like, oh, what is this? What is this? And you're going through weird bouts of like happiness and then anger and then sadness. And you just don't understand anything. And I would say ever since jumping into this, it's like, I don't know, all of it's just gone.
Yeah.
Like it's weird. I can't really explain it. But it just seems like I know what it is now and I know what I'm supposed to do and I'm just going to go do it.
So I guess if some lost soul came up to you and said, like, Michelle, what is the meaning of life? Do you think you would have a concise answer for them?
Not really.
Yeah.
I think my meaning will be different from somebody else's meaning.
Sure.
Because like my meaning is just like I'm here every day. I think my goal is to share the word of God, however, like as I'm learning, just kind of share what I know as I'm learning, and to just live like a peaceful, quiet life. Like if I could just be out in the middle of somewhere, not too far by myself, because my grandpa used to have a farm where like your neighbor was like 20, 30 miles out. I don't want to be that far out.
Right.
But I just want to be out somewhere where it's just like, this is my house. I have a garden and it's just me chilling. And I can maybe see my neighbor, but we're not like on each other.
Yeah.
Like to me, that's life. That's peaceful. That's the meaning.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could like die happy.
Would you be open to like hearing like, I guess the Catholic answer to what the meaning of life is?
Yeah.
It's to know, to love, and to serve God. And whenever you do those things, like you find your purpose, you find happiness, like that is the goal to happiness. And it sounds like, even though like, and just from what I'm hearing from your story, it sounds like even though you didn't know that like specific formula, you found that and you found peace and happiness because of it.
Yeah. That's actually a good saying.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I don't know. I just love hearing this story. Like it's really cool to hear.
Yeah.
So you said you made a media company before. What was the focus on that?
So at the time, because we were just doing gaming videos, one of our friends, I forgot where he worked at the time, but he needed our help building a website. And in turn, they were like, oh, we're going to fly, well, not fly us out, but they were like, we want you to come to this anime convention in Beverly Hills. And you can just come here and film it and do whatever. And we're like, okay, cool. And another YouTuber we knew at the time, she did gaming. And she was just like, oh, if you guys are going to be out here, I need somebody to be at E3 with me and to film all of that. And we're just like, okay, cool. That's awesome. That then, because we didn't get paid for any of that, but that somehow we turned that into, let's do stuff for other creators and artists and just like, but get paid. So that was like the focus was, so we were doing stuff for music artists, like locally, other content creators. That's all.
Okay. So I was that fun to do? Cause I've you've a lot of the stuff that you've done on your channel, like, I've seen like you put like frames on your video and it's just like I'm not even on that level yet. Like I've got like the basic StreamYard thing going on.
Yeah, I learned a lot from our first time doing things. And a part of me, I'm not gonna lie, part of me is like lazy. So I'm like, how do I do this the most simple way possible without too much editing and whatnot? So, but I know at some point I'm gonna have to do like better edits and cuts because you have to hold people's attentions.
Yeah. No, I my last video that I did was literally like 1 minute and 10 seconds long. And like it's probably like the best one that I've done in a long line, other than like my own conversion story. And it it was I don't know, it took me so long to make that 1 minute video, and it's probably because I tried to make it a 13-minute video, and then I was just like, I should just throw away the rest of this stuff and just keep it short and sweet.
Yeah, that's how it is sometimes. Like when I decided I wasn't gonna have like cursing on my channel anymore, because not from me, but like if I'm reacting to something and they're cursing. So
Yeah.
now when I go to those videos, just editing out every swear word now takes so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've tried. I guess I haven't done any like reaction style videos, and I don't know. Like I'm a little intimidated to do something like that too, because it's just like I've watched some really good ones. Like Trent Horn and Michael Lofton will do like some really amazing in-depth stuff, and then they'll be like, "So he says this here," and like we'll pull up a PowerPoint, and I'm just like, "I die, you guys make me look like an idiot," and it was just like I don't have the time or resources to do something like that. But that's why you guys get paid the big bucks, and yeah, I'll let y'all do that, and I'll just have friendly conversations with interesting people, and we'll just keep going. We'll do that.
Yeah, but that works too. Like,
Yeah, yeah. No, actually one of the favorite interviews that I've ever done, and I'd never say this to his face, but actually Kevin, who's in the live chat, he's I guess like for simplicity's sake, he would call himself an atheist, like for conversation's sake, but he's not terribly interested in labels. Um, he's like one of the friendliest guys I think I've ever met in my life. And like we've yet to meet in person, but that was one of my favorite interviews because he's just such a friendly guy. He's got a really interesting story. And yes, we disagree on like a lot of things, and shockingly enough, like we agree on a lot of stuff. He's like it's like I know it's like if he was my neighbor, we'd be hanging out all the time.
yeah,
But like this kind of stuff is just fun for me. It's like you don't really have to prep for it. Like whenever the interview ends, like I'm just gonna throw it up. I'm not gonna edit it out. Neither one of us are swearing, so once
yeah,
again, not a problem.
yeah. That's the beauty of not swearing.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, okay. Well, he corrected me. He prefers the term agnostic, not atheist. So,
Oh, okay.
mea culpa, Kevin. Um,
That's the term my boyfriend and then my brother uses. So
okay, gotcha.
yeah.
Um, he said you'd be sick of me if we were neighbors. But so you don't have to get into your boyfriend's story at all. So like, and feel free, and I cannot underline this enough. Like, feel free to decline to answer this question. But
Okay.
like, so like, how's he taken the conversion experience? I know he's in the live chat being like super supportive. So like, how's he handling all this?
He's handling it fine,
Okay.
honestly. I'm not gonna lie. So like when I first, it was just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a Christian now. Like this to see the
Mhm.
look on his face, that first reaction, because me and him had a conversation about it. He was just like, you kind of took me off guard because I wasn't expecting to hear that. He was like, it just shocked me. Whereas
Mhm.
like from my side of things, I thought it meant something completely different. And at the time, our friend group, because like they're not religious, so
Mhm.
because none of us were, So at the time, I guess everybody was coming to him kind of like, oh, how are you okay? How do you feel with her being Christian? And it angered me at the time because I'm like, you all act like I killed somebody. I'm not a murderer. I'm just reading a Bible every day.
Right. So like, did you lose any friends over that at all, or is everybody just kind of cool with it now?
Yeah, everybody's actually really cool and supportive about it. So,
Okay.
like when I came out, every time I go to somebody's house now, they'll start talking, and then if a swear word slips out, they'll be like, "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to swear around you." And I'm like, "You can swear. I'm just not. I'm personally not swearing. It's okay." And they're like, "No, no, I don't want to offend you." And they're
Right.
just like that supportive on that level. It's kind of funny.
That's yeah. That is funny. The um what is it? It's like I kind of have this reaction to a lot of people. It's like I'm not your dad. Like it's just like
Like,
if you were my kid, I might have a problem with it, but like I'm not I'm not your parent, so like
yeah,
I'm
it's
not
like
really
I don't care. Do what you want.
yeah, I'm not responsible
Yeah,
for
it's like keep drinking, smoking, whatever. That's
yeah.
not me. So
Yeah, hey, yeah, exactly. It's like you're responsible for yourself.
yeah.
Um I just want to like kind of open it up to the live chat a little bit. Like It's funny because like this has been like the fastest that anybody's like ever like joined this. Like Kevin was in here like immediately, but like it's probably been like the most successful live stream I've ever had.
Oh,
But does anybody in the live stream have any questions? Feel free to post them. Like obviously it's not busy, so I can get to pretty much everything.
yeah.
Because yeah, I'm kind of running out of questions. But is there anything that I didn't get to that you'd like to add?
Not really. Like
Okay.
we pretty much talked about everything. Me coming over to Christianity.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
guess, if somebody's kind of like on that fence of like, I don't know, like some of this kind of seems cool, some of it seems a little silly. Like what would you recommend to that person?
I would tell them to like at least just like read John, like maybe read a chapter. You
Hmm.
know, I don't expect them to do the whole book, but like, maybe read one chapter. See how you feel. If you want to progress or not, go from there. And then I also watch Alan Parr's like videos. So I'd be like, hey,
Ah,
just maybe watch this video, or maybe tell them to watch Ruslan, because maybe Ruslan would be better for like
hmm,
somebody kind of on the fence. Because he talks about a lot of issues like in the rest of the world, and he tries to look at it from like a Christian perspective.
hmm.
So I'd be like, maybe check this out. That
Gotcha.
might appeal to somebody that's kind of on the fence.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess it's like
Yeah.
look into it would be like, hey, the
Yeah.
resources are out there. I've watched a few of Alan Parr's thing, and I don't know, he just strikes me as that kind of guy that like if I saw him in the grocery store, I'd probably go out of my way to shake his hand. Like it's just like, and I might annoy him, but I don't care. Like it's just like, hey, sir, just we disagree on a lot of things, but I just really appreciate what you do. Like,
Yeah.
but I don't know. He's also got that really like I don't know. He's just got that like strong personality that is just like I don't know. I don't know how to put it into words, but like I just really appreciate what he does. And
Yeah.
then I got Kevin in here who's got us a double whammy on questions. So,
Okay.
but he said, did you have any positive arguments for atheism or when you were an atheist? So like, so like, well, this was the reason that I was an atheist. That you have to disprove this before I leave.
No. I wouldn't call them like positive arguments. It's usually the same stuff you hear from atheists. It's kind of
Oh,
just like it's like, oh, if he's real, like why would God allow this to happen if he's real? And if he's so real, why can't I talk to him directly? Why doesn't he shout his voice down? And stuff like that.
gotcha,
I don't think is positive or strong at all. It's just I feel
gotcha.
like to be an atheist, you have to have a lot more faith than somebody who's religious.
I think that's a C.S. Lewis line.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, like I think I've heard C.S. Lewis say that because it's just like, I don't know. There's a lot of things. Oh, well, let me ask you: are you familiar with Thomas Aquinas? Have you come across him yet?
no.
One of his things. So Saint Thomas Aquinas, he's a lot of like he lived in the 13th century, I believe, so 1200s. So before there was any like real divisions in the West. And he came up with the 5 ways. And one of the things that he talked about is the prime mover. So he talks about, we see that things are in motion. I've got this glass, you know, who's putting this glass into motion? Obviously, it's me. Well, who put
Mhm.
me into motion? Ultimately, my parents. And you just hit the rewind button on everything, and you go all the way back to, and let's just, for the sake of the conversation, say that the Big Bang Theory is true. So you've got
Yeah.
everything in a hot, dense space here. What put that into motion? Everything that we see, something else has to put it into motion. There has to be an unmoved mover,
Yeah.
something that nothing else put into motion started all of this. And then Aquinas ends it with, and this is what we understand to be God. Um, and um, so in order to be an atheist, I feel like you have to ignore that fact that like, we see everything here that's in motion is put into motion by something else. It could not go back infinitely because if it stretched back with no beginning, well, then there's no beginning. How did we get to this point? It has to have a start point. and that start point had to be caused by God.
Yeah.
And in order to be an atheist, you kind of have to just take it on faith that, like, well, I guess something magically happened.
It's
Um,
funny, like I've never heard of this guy, but I've heard that argument before.
yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of funny
Mhm,
because that is usually what it goes back to. Because
mhm.
that goes back to the whole having that faith. Because a scientist was like, "Oh, we think this happened," but there's really no evidence of that happening. So
Yeah,
you're just kind of like, "Well, a scientist said it, so I'm gonna believe the scientist."
yeah. Well, that's an
That's really
argument
all
from
it is.
authority. So, which in scientific terms is like the weakest argument, but
Yeah.
which is hilarious. There's one of my favorite guys ever, Brian Holdsworth. He has a saying is like, trust the science is like the worst saying you could possibly say, because like science is necessarily like you need to be able to verify it. So to just say just believe me in scientific terms is like the worst thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I've heard that before too. Because as a
yeah,
scientist, you are supposed to prove whatever you're trying to prove. So you can't just sit there and be like, "Well,
mhm,
you got to believe it because I said it." It's like, but where?
right,
Why? Like, where's the proof for what you're saying?
yeah. So and then I guess Kevin had a follow up question. He um so oh, hold on, sorry, he posted something. It says so were you a strong atheist or just more of like an agnostic atheist, I guess? I don't know.
Mm,
I guess my take on your story was a little bit more like you just kind of fell into like cultural atheism. It's just like,
yeah,
man, this kind of seems a little silly. I guess this is the other option. Does that sound about
yeah,
right?
yeah. That sounds about right.
Okay,
Because
cool.
it's kind of funny because there was points in my life where something happened. I would like any other atheist would. You'd start praying to God, or you would think of that.
Hmm.
And then if things like the tide turns good, then you're just like, yeah, I'm not believing that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
usually what happens. And it's funny because I watch a lot of like cartoons and I've seen that happen in like Family Guy and Rick and Morty and like certain
Hmm.
episodes. And I have to laugh every time because I'm like, that used to be me.
Yeah, it's you talk about like it's like, oh, what if God real, then why this happened? There's a Facebook group that has that, and it's just like, if God real, if God real, why don't I have a girlfriend? And it's just like, you know, yeah. So, it just some things like that, and like I call those like Reddit atheists, who is just
Yeah.
like, you guys are an embarrassment to the atheist community. There are some really smart atheists, and like I can imagine these guys are looking at your arguments and just like, please shut up. I don't want people associating me with you. And like I
Yeah.
know there's Catholics like that. It's just like, I wish you guys would just stop. Like, um, but
That's like in every group though. You'll be doing what you're
oh
supposed
yeah.
to do, and then you'll have that one person where you're just like, stop it. You're making us all look bad.
Yeah, Kevin's over there says like, never go to our atheism. Um, but well, cool. Well, Michelle, I just want to thank you so much for your time. This has been a blast. As we mentioned in a like previous interview, like if you ever want to have me on the channel for ask questions, hear my story, totally love to have it. And for all of you who are watching, if you made it this far, thank you so much for your time and God bless.
Yeah, God bless.
And I am